And Kevin picked last week, so he needs to again pick this week first. No, I guess we'll be.
I'll go. I don't care. I don't care. I've been sitting here kind of working on it. I skipped out on the last whip arounds as I was sitting here thinking about my pick. I went back to the 2014 Alabama game, thinking that was the last time I picked against Ohio State. And as I think I said on the show last week, when you're covering a team that doesn't lose all that much, if you just pick Ohio State, you're going to be right a hell of a lot more than you're going to be wrong. I picked Ohio State to win that game. So maybe I was seeing with clouded eyes or just fear of the message board turning on itself and me having to step in the middle of all of that. I've watched the Alabama Ole Miss game a couple times as kind of a blueprint, and how Ole Miss was able really for much of the game to just hang with Alabama and just went slug for slug, and it just came down to who was going to be able to get a stop and who wasn't. And we may say all these things about this Alabama defense being much more mortal than it is year in and year out. The Ole Miss defense, putrid, horrible, and they eventually broke. We have a lot of people saying things about the Ohio State defense this year. Yeah, the Buckeyes gave up 400 yards to Clemson via the pass, only 44 on the ground, took Trevor Lawrence out of the game more or less as a runner. I like Ohio State's offensive ability to be able to go slug for slug. Why not? Ohio State, 52, Alabama, 49.
Wow.
Barn burner.
That's great. Yeah, the over-under is like 77, 78, so they're thinking something on the lines of 42-35 Alabama, the odds makers. Alabama is now up to an 8-point favorite, where if you can get it over 7 points, I think, the obvious play to me is Ohio State plus the points. And that's if all things are equal. That's if Ohio State's relatively healthy, if Justin Fields is able to run even a little bit, able to throw without limitation. He had the thumb injury coming into the game, and that wasn't a problem. I watched him in warmups, and he hit one 50-yard pass after another to the guys going down the sideline against air. And then he took it over into the game where, again, it was basically like they were against air. So, because Clemson was always 5 yards behind the play. So, I don't know if that's going to be the case with Patrick Surtain and Alabama's secondary, although they were something in the 70s, I think, in passing yards allowed this season. Again, some of that could be a function of the fact that Alabama's offense had people down 24-0, 31-0. And at that point, it doesn't do any good to run the football. So for 3/4 of the game, all people did against Alabama was throw the football. So you don't know how skewed those numbers are. We do know that Ole Miss and Florida both threw for about 400 yards against Alabama in competitive one-score games. As they turned out, I think Ole Miss scored a touchdown in the final minute to make it one score. But, competitive games. So I think if Fields is healthy, he's going to have a big day. Olave and Wilson are going to have a big day. Keep going to the tight end. That was huge. And, let's test Alabama's run defense and just see what you've got, because you've got a veteran offensive line. It would seem to me that Matthew Jones is probably going to play again. I can't imagine that Harry Miller on 10 days is going to be fully healthy coming back from COVID to play, or if he's even eligible to play based on when his test may have been. It just seems to be that maybe they would split time, or that Matthew Jones is going to play again at guard and line up and run and open some of those holes like they did against Clemson and see what happens. Trey Sermon was a beast. And my daughter and I were sitting here watching one segment of the game on the Big 10 and 60 where it was just boom, 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 boom. And he's carrying 3 and 4 guys with him on every play. He's getting hit 2 or 3 yards downfield and falling forward for 8 yards. And is he going to be able to do that against Alabama? I don't know. I doubt it. But I saw a lot of great indications in that game that this team is there for the long haul. 639 yards against Clemson, can they get in the 400s even against Alabama? Probably. So, that may be enough. Kevin said, 52-49? Yeah. I was just sitting here saying something like 41-38, something like that. I rarely, if ever, pick against Ohio State. I'll probably pick Ohio State. The only thing that's got me worried or questioning this is Justin Fields' health and the number of players Ohio State's without in terms of COVID. Because if Togiai and Tyreek Smith can't play, they've been difference makers the last 2 games. Togiai really all season. If they can't play, then that takes a 2/11ths of your best 11 starters on defense would be out, and some other guys are going to have to step up and match their level of play. So put me down for 41-38 and check back on Bucknuts in a day or two to see if that's Ohio State or Alabama. But it's going to be high scoring. I certainly would advocate plus the 8. I'm ambivalent on the over-under. I mean, it could end up at 75 if you don't get paid and still be considered a high-scoring game. So, maybe somebody will mix a stop in there somewhere. But those are my thoughts right now. I'm probably leaning toward Ohio State, but I just want to know a little bit more before I certify it.
Mark, I'll be brief because we've got OSU Zooms at 2:45, and I still have to make some lunch. So knowing that I am not anytime I've picked Ohio State in a playoff game, it hasn't gone well. Every time I have picked against Ohio State, that has gone well for the Buckeyes. So let's keep that in mind as I talk. I do think that whoever's missing defensively for the Buckeyes, there are only so many possessions in a game for Alabama, especially when Ohio State's offense is also moving down the field and scoring. So I think Ohio State's offense mitigates some of that defensive loss if we assume that most of those drives end up in touchdowns regardless. And so I do expect a shootout. I'm going to go 45. Gosh dang it, Mark. Why do you put that there? I'm going to go Alabama 45-42, field goal at the end. Ohio State does not have the ability right now to kick field goals. Blake Hobbiel is a little tweaked, and so maybe they don't take that shot at the end when they can, and then they get stuffed on the 4th down. Alabama moves down for one last 55-yarder, and that's what gets the job done for Alabama. I do think it's going to be close. Any guys missing, I think, like I said, gets mitigated by Ohio State's offense being able to score, run the ball, throw the ball. There's only so many points that can be scored, and Ohio State's going to score a bunch of them, and I think Alabama will as well.